Hi everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves and having a safe week. Today, we are stepping into a case that frozen framed a nation in the winter of 1996. A tragedy that rewrote the rules of high-profile criminal investigations, sparked a consuming media wildfire, and left an absolute maze of conflicting clues that has baffled the bright minds of forensic science for 3 decades. It's a story that begins not with a sudden break-in or a forced window, but with 3 pages of handwritten paper resting quietly on a wooden staircase inside a luxury home. This is the deeply tragic, enduring mystery of JonBenet Ramsey. In December 1996, the Ramsey household looked like the absolute pinnacle of suburban success. John Ramsey was a wealthy, highly successful corporate executive, and his wife, Patsy, was a well-known local socialite. Together with their 9-year-old son, Burke, and their beautiful 6-year-old daughter, JonBenet, a charismatic, fiercely talented local child beauty queen. They lived inside a sprawling, 15-room Tudor mansion on 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado. They had just celebrated a wonderful, chaotic Christmas day. But at 5:30 a.m. on the morning of December 26th, the holiday peace was instantly incinerated. Patsy Ramsey walked down the back spiral staircase to brew morning coffee and noticed 3 pages of notepad paper neatly lined up on one of the steps. As she scanned the frantic handwriting, a wave of pure terror crashed over her. The note claimed to be from a foreign faction, declaring that JonBenet had been abducted, demanding an incredibly specific ransom of $118,000, and warning that any call to the police would result in her immediate execution. Patsy screamed for John, ran to JonBenet's bedroom to find it completely empty, and frantically dialed 911, setting off a sequence of events that would compromise the crime scene before the first sun could even rise over the snow. When the initial Boulder Patrol officers arrived at the mansion, they made a series of catastrophic, irreversible procedural errors. They failed to seal off the perimeter of the home, allowing family friends, neighbors, and ministers to walk through the rooms, entirely obliterating potential footprint and trace evidence. For hours, the house was a chaotic waiting room. No kidnapping calls arrived from the mysterious faction. At 1 p.m., nearly 7 hours after the initial 911 call, a detective named Linda Arndt took John Ramsey aside and suggested he search the interior of the house from top to bottom just to see if anything looked out of place. John, accompanied by a close family friend, descended the wooden stairs into the dark, labyrinthine basement. He walked past the playroom, down a narrow corridor, and opened the door to a small, windowless concrete room used as a wine cellar. When John turned on the light, the search for the missing 6-year-old came to a devastating, horrific end. Resting on the floor beneath a white blanket was JonBenet. John cried out, lifted her fragile body in his arms, and carried her upstairs into the living room, unintentionally contaminating the final, critical forensic repository of the case. An autopsy would later reveal a terrifying reality. JonBenet hadn't been removed from the home. She had been brutally assaulted, suffered a massive skull fracture from a heavy blow to the head, and was ultimately strangled to death using a highly sophisticated, handmade rope garrote. As the homicide investigation exploded into the global media landscape, detectives found themselves trapped inside an architecture of absolute contradiction. Every single clue pointing toward an outside intruder was instantly met by a matching piece of evidence pointing directly back at the home. First, there was the ransom note. It was extraordinarily lengthy, 3 full pages, and forensic analysis proved it had been written using a black felt-tip pen and a legal pad that belonged exclusively to Patsy Ramsey, pulled right from the family desk. The ransom amount, $118,000, was the exact corporate bonus John Ramsey had received earlier that year. A hyper-specific number that very few people outside his inner circle could have possibly known. To the initial police department, It looked like an elaborate, inside cover-up designed to obscure a domestic accident. But when forensic teams began analyzing JonBenét's clothing using advanced microscopic tools, the intruder theory roared back to life. They uncover minute, foreign DNA profile, unidentified male DNA, blotted on her underwear and leggings, perfectly mixed with her blood. There was zero match to anyone in the Ramsey family, no match in the national databases, and a small, broken basement window with a fresh scuff mark on the wall below suggested a phantom had indeed managed to slip into the dark house while the family slept. For over a decade, the Ramsey family lived inside a brutal, public crucible of suspicion. They were tried and convicted in the court of public opinion, their lives entirely dismantled by constant media scrutiny and conflicting leaks from competing law enforcement factions. But the trajectory of the investigation shifted entirely in 2008, driven by a revolutionary scientific leap known as touch DNA. Traditional testing required a visible drop of blood or biological fluid. But touch DNA allows forensic scientists to scrape invisible, microscopic skin cells left behind whenever a human hand physically touches an object. Mary Lacey, the progressive Boulder district attorney who had taken over the case file, sent the preserved clothing samples to an elite, independent laboratory. The results were absolute. The exact same unidentified male DNA profile found in 1996 was successfully recovered from the exterior waistbands of JonBenét's sweatpants. The precise anatomical locations where an attacker would have grasped her body to move her. Armed with this definitive proof of a shared, matching outside profile, Mary Lacey took the historic step of issuing a formal public apology letter to John Ramsey, officially clearing the family of all criminal suspicion. The inside cover-up theory was scientifically dead, but the phantom still lacked a face. Today, the murder of JonBené Ramsey remains an open, active, and high-priority cold case file. Decades after the initial panic subsided, the investigation has transitioned away from the old, compromised hallways of the 15th Street mansion and into the cutting-edge frontier of modern digital genetics. In recent years, a specialized Colorado cold case review team was officially assembled, pulling together top forensic pathologists, digital analysts, and genealogical experts from across the country. The Boulder Police Department is actively utilizing investigative genetic genealogy, the exact same microscopic dragnet that cracked the Golden State Killer file. They're taking that pristine, unidentified male DNA profile and running it against massive public ancestry databases, mapping out vast family trees, tracking down distant third cousins, and narrowing the grid down to a single biological lineage. The ultimate resolution of this case will not be found in the sensationalism of the old headlines or the debates of television pundits, but in the quiet, unbendable math of a DNA sequence. It is a race against the clock to ensure that the entity who walked down into that basement 30 years ago is finally named. JonBené was a child whose life was stolen in the most horrific way imaginable. And by continuing to scrutinize the files and push the limits of technology, we ensure that her memory is honored and that the truth will finally cut through the dark. I want to know what you guys think about this monumental forensic effort. Do you believe that modern genetic genealogy will finally unmask the face behind the unidentified DNA profile, or has the passage of time permanently protected the identity of the Boulder Phantom? Let's talk about it down in the comments below. And please, keep the discussion deeply respectful of JonBenét's memory and her surviving family. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, look out for one another, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. Bye.